Hello, and welcome to our presentation on the mentality of the zoo animal by Molly Curry, I myself Lillian Fatella, Sophia Chen, and Yazli Garillo. We share the earth with wildlife's most fascinating animals. The zoo is a fun place to go and see wild animals in real life with your family and friends. Now, although zoos do an efficient job at managing the conservation of endangered species, the most important goal of a zoo should be to build enclosures that match an animal's native environment as much as possible to ensure a stress free lifestyle. So, the main idea here is not to advocate for the removal of all zoos in society, but rather discuss ways that they can improve overall animal welfare. So, some of the ideas here that we're going to be talking about is we want to first address the issue at hand. So, we will be talking about zoocosis, discussing the clinical signs and symptoms of zoocosis through real life examples, how zoocosis affects zoo animals, and ways to combat it. We also want to discuss what can be done, right? So, building enclosures to encourage natural behavior and discussing enrichment tactics. And then we will be concluding by talking about some of the benefits to zoo and also what other alternatives are there besides zoos. So, what is zoocosis? Zoocosis is a form of psychosis that is often observed in zoo animals, which is often due to the unnatural and stressful environments they are placed in. Zoos restrict their animals from what they can and cannot do and are limiting the animals of many things which they are not used to in the wild, such as space, socialization, etc. An article from the Journal of Wildlife and Biodiversity website talks about how zoocosis at major has the potential to alter the mental and physical health in zoo animals. So it's important to recognize that zoocosis not only affects the physical health, but also the mental health of zoo animals. So, a lot of these symptoms are species specific, which is something that will be further discussed in the upcoming examples. But the symptoms of zoocosis are, but are not limited to, depression, anxiety, more frequent fear, motivation, aggression, chronic illness, impaired limbs, compromised immune systems, impaired reproductive function, and in some cases, even death. So, because zoocosis is psychological, it's important to take into account the behavioral signs that are induced by zoocosis. And some of these signs include pacing, less activity, aggression, repetitive behaviors, whale eye. And so, for those of you that are unfamiliar with whale eye is a term that is used to describe the appearance of a mammal's eye when it is going through a lot of stress. Typically, you can see the white outer part of the eye, indicating that it has been stressed for a very long time. Also, chewing on objects, swaying, rocking, and overgrooming, which is most certainly seen in wildcats and other mammals as well. So, one famous example of zoocosis is Tilikum the orca. He was a famous orca that was held in captivity by SeaWorld for 34 years, and at the time that he was separated from his mother, he was only 2 years old. An article from Sage Journals reports that the people that captured Tilikum used immense approaches such as aircraft, underwater explosives, and heavy duty netting. So the image of Tilikum here on the left, you can see that his dorsal fin is slightly collapsed when it is supposed to be standing straight up. And you can see how those conditions resulted in the abnormal folding of his dorsal fin due to the result of abduction trauma and prolonged physical distress. Throughout Tilikum's life, he spent most of his time in aquarium tanks with not a lot of roaming space. And his unattended chronic stress provoked him into killing three sea park trainers throughout his lifetime, and his eventual passing in 2017 at 36 years old, when the average lifespan of orcas is between 50 to 90 years. So you can see the things that occurred throughout his lifetime as a result of his unattended chronic stress. So another prime example here is elephants. And elephants are actually one of the most commonly abused animals in the entertainment industry, and that doesn't just go for zoos. On the image here to the left is a picture of the elephant enclosure at the Beijing Zoo in China. Here you can see that this African elephant does not have a lot of space to move around and has no interactive stimuli in its environment, and instead only has the small patch of dirt to walk on, and then a small door behind him that leads inside of a cage with a tight viewing space for the zoo's audience. It is very important to optimize the care of elephants in zoos because they are very prone to developing age related health issues that can worsen if placed in a poor enclosure. According to a study performed by PubMed Central, living in small enclosures or cramped conditions can actually increase an elephant's likelihood of developing pododermatitis, which defines the swelling of the skin or the skin of the paws or the feet, in other words, and degenerative bone disease, as well as abnormal weight problems. Large wildcat species are also another common zoo animal that require plenty of space for roaming and interaction. Many large wildcat species that are placed in cage like environments in zoos are often seen pacing back and forth, which is a huge indicator of chronic stress. This can be caused by enclosures being too small or even the anticipation of a meal, which can mess with their normal carnivorous like behavior. In the image here on the right, you can see a tiger that has made a visible dirt path from pacing back and forth. The zoo or location of this tiger's enclosure is unknown. So, there are solutions to help alleviate problems of psychological distress with wild animals and to ensure that they live longer, more fulfilling lives. Enrichment is a very successful approach in accomplishing this and is a basic husbandry principle carried out by many zoos across the US that involves providing zoo animals with environmental stimuli that optimize their psychological and physiological well being. Some of these environmental stimuli can include puzzles, toys, or interactive devices. And here in the image on the left, we can see a tiger that is interacting with the ball on a rope to entertain itself. The image on the right now is actually a picture of the orangutan enclosure at the Phoenix Zoo that shows an orangutan playing with a chunk of ice that has food inside of it. This is actually a great approach because not only do these frozen treats help these animals cool off in the dry, hot weather in Arizona, but they are also a great mental exercise that helps encourage natural behavior within animals to alleviate the side effects of zoochosis and help them live longer lives. It is also very important to ensure that any animals placed in any enclosure in the zoo that their enclosures match their native environments as much as possible. Now, the idea of zoos remaining open for the general public still remains a controversial topic to this day, but it's also important to recognize that there are benefits of having zoos open. Some zoos do an excellent job of promoting education through interactive activities with visitors to help create a more informed audience about the basic principles of wildlife. And there are also informational tours that can be taken in some zoos, along with shows to feature animals to showcase what they are and give general information on the animal itself. Zoos also play a crucial part in regulating the breeding of animals, such as overseeing population control and to help prevent the extinction of animals that are on the endangered list. We can also consider other alternatives to zoos. There are sanctuaries, which are facilities that care for animals and typically oversee animals that have been abused for a short or a long term basis that people are welcome to visit, as defined by the American Psychological Association. There are also rescue and rehabilitation centers, and these facilities provide care treatment to wild animals until they are healthy enough to be released. Lastly, it's not impossible to view animals in their natural habitats. And one common example of this is Arizona, which is located in Flagstaff, Arizona. And Bearizona gives people the opportunity to drive their cars around the habitat where bears and other deer species live in an unrestricted environment that's managed by wildlife professionals. Here are our citations, and thank you so much for listening.